I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a checkbook back when we wrote checks for things, and I scribbled him the amount of the award out of my personal bank account. And I shoved it in him. I go, Tony, I am so, so sorry. You own this whether you're leaving or not, and it's completely my fault.
This is The Profitable Broker.
Well, welcome everyone to the Profitable Broker podcast, where we regularly speak with people who are moving the needle in the real estate industry. And today I'm so excited to have Phil Soper with us. Phil is the CEO of Royal LePage. He's a board member of the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, a graduate of both the University of Alberta and the Richard Ivey School of Business, which is my alma mater. And Phil, I believe this year you're the chairman of Realty Alliance, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I am, yeah. Long-time principal, and they finally decided they'd let a Canadian run the show for a while.
Well, that's a wise choice, because I describe you, Phil, as an industry leader, as one of the industry leaders, frankly, that we all listen to. Right? Phil's the calm voice who can get to the bottom of whatever's all the noise going on and chart a clear path forward. I think, Phil, you're one of the most listened to voices, frankly, in the industry. Phil's also a family man with 4 daughters and his wife, Melody, and that we see from time to time on social media. And he's also been a friend of mine for over 20 years, and we've had the pleasure of working on many projects together. So welcome to the Profitable Broker podcast, Phil, and thank you for taking the time. I know how busy you are.
Well, thank you for having me on this widely respected piece of information sharing for our industry. I hope I can add a little bit of value.
I'm sure we'll add lots today, Phil. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I always like to start the conversation off by asking, I want to ask you how about your journey. What got you into the real estate business? I know, you were involved in real estate over the years, but what got you in the brokerage side of the business with Royal LePage?
Wow. You know what? I joke with my folks that I started in the industry at the top, because my first actual job in real estate, I guess tangentially, it was running the Royal LePage corporate relocations business. Remember when that was a big deal, moving people around the world and government and all that sort of thing? That was back at the turn of the century. And about 18 months after I took that role, my predecessor, the great Simon Dean, who I'm sure you remember, announced he was retiring, and I got the nod. But the journey into this job was historical accident. I've been on the board of a couple of universities, University of Alberta, the Toronto Metropolitan here in the city, the old Ryerson. And when I have a chance to talk to students, I say, don't underestimate the power of luck in career planning. You have to take advantage of luck when she knocks on your door. But for me, I spent the 90s running a couple of big IT firms. The last one was IBM Canada's consulting and services implementation business, a big systems integration business, the largest in the country at the time. And I had done a lot of moving around with IBM. I spent time in Europe, in Paris and in London. I worked in New York and Silicon Valley and a couple of places across the country. People who say IBM or stood for I'd been moved. But at this particular point in the late 90s, they wanted me to move back to New York. I had a couple of small children, and I was tired of bouncing around and wanted some stability. I had a good nanny. I just didn't feel like it. And I got a phone call from an old colleague of mine from the University of Alberta. And he said, "Hey, have you ever thought of a career change?" And I go, "Well, as a matter of fact, I'm a little annoyed. The company wants to relocate me again." And he goes, "You should meet my boss," which was Simon Dean. And I went and chatted with Simon, and he was a very impressive guy. And it took a few months before I got my head around leaving IT and moving into real estate. But I did so right at the end of 1999. And of course, what happened in the first 6 months of 2000 was the dot com bubble burst.
Mhm.
And my successor had to lay off at IBM in this consulting services business, had to lay off hundreds of people. It was a real bloodbath. And of course, the past 25 years have been very good to real estate. So that's what I mean by, lady luck. It was just a chance that I changed industries and made the move into real estate. But I couldn't be happier. I couldn't have planned a better career move.
Well, we're sure glad you made that career change, Phil. And when you were talking, I was thinking probably how a lot of us start in real estate, right? Is, hey, how would you like a career change? Your journey was like the rest of us. I want to talk for a second about culture, because when I think about your organization, I think about the phenomenal culture that you have, and I think one of the leaders of that culture for sure. How important do you think how important do you think culture is in an organization? First of all,
In any business, and I mean a business that really relies on people, in any business that relies on people, and I mean one that really relies on people, say an accountancy, a consultancy like yours, a a big law firm, or a real estate company, where your product is the intellectual capability of human beings. You're not heavily reliant on machines, investments, and plant and equipment. I've done that in my past, and it is a different kind of business. Yes, you still have people, but in our business, people are our product. We don't actually sell houses, right? We offer advice and counsel on the sales process. And culture then becomes the operational glue
mm,
that holds things together. One thing I learned years and years ago was that it is much, much better for culture and for profitability to retain good people rather than constantly having to recruit to replace people. So if you can put an investment in making people glad to be part of a family, of a business, of an organization, uh, they'll stay. If you deal with their irritants, you listen to their problems, they'll stay. And that is the biggest strength you could have. As I look to some of my competitors across North America, some of them run very good uh, recruiting businesses where they're bringing in lots of people, but they're also a revolving door. And they have very high attrition and a lot of people moving out one door as they move in the other. I think that's hard on culture. It's hard to get any momentum, and it's hard to build organizational memory. So yeah, culture is every bit as important as having the right technology, the right training, the right branding and marketing. It is one of the pillars that keeps a company like ours afloat.
well, and I'm glad you described it that way, Phil, because at the beginning I said, hey, you're the leader of that culture, and you talked about being a family. And one of the things I know about you is that you have relationships with the feet in the street, with the people at the brokerage level, at the sales level. You're interacting with them all of the time. And I was trying to think about an example of this, and I wasn't there, but I did see a video of you performing with one of the most iconic rock bands in history, not just in Canadian history. And history at a Royal LePage a sales event, a sales rally. Could you tell us about that and what an experience that must have been like and what an impact it had on the people?
Well, more broadly, I've always been of the belief that a leader at whatever level, first line management, right up to CEO in a company, if you want people to get engaged and be part of what you're trying to create as far as culture or a creation of having creating a feeling that your colleagues have your back and that you're in this together, you have to be there too. So and this is, as a leader in a business, it's something that's hard to test for in the interview process. Is someone going to, spend a Saturday night with your clients at an important event for your clients when it means being away from your family? Uh, it's important that we provide balance for our team, but it's equally important if you want to be a leader in industry, in any industry, but I think particularly in such a people-oriented business like this, that you be willing to meld your personal life and your corporate life. So one of the advantages for a guy like me who's been passionate about music forever, for example, is that my team, they like to see me up on stage doing something that's a little unusual for, say, a CEO to be doing, and that includes playing music. So, for example, Chris Hadfield, our famous Canadian uh, astronaut, was just returning from space where he had played David Bowie's Space Oddity and retiring. And we were lucky enough to be one of his early bookings. So I reached out to Chris and I said, hey, would you be willing to do a couple of songs on stage? So we did one Space Oddity, including a broker of mine, Mark Rashad, who's a professional musician. And we had Second City as a choir. It was absolutely magical. And we did one of his brother's a musician. We did one of his songs, which is a tribute to Canada. I played with Randy Bachman when he spoke at our Winnipeg National Conference, and the list goes on. Lots of opportunities to get on stage. Uh, and I'd say music is just one of the ways I reach out to people through culture, through personal touch. I think, we do treks in support of our foundation. I've in a few weeks, we have a motorcycle ride in support of our foundation. We do cooking classes and train, lots of different ways to bring people together. I run a Ryder Cup style golf event every year, a competition, Team Red versus Black, our corporate colors, that brings people together from Halifax to Victoria. So look for ways to bring people's personal passions together with colleagues from work, and it creates connections on a very different level.
You know, it's interesting, Phil. You talked about that as a privilege you have, but I very much look at that as one of your leadership qualities, right? Is humility, and I think it's a great lesson for all the brokers out there. Is that you are a busy guy. I mean, you have a lot of responsibilities. You have tens of thousands of realtors. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brokers coast to coast. You've got investors. You've got all of these different constituencies. But through it all, you find the time to go and take on these activities because it drives culture. And so that old saying, the proof's in the pudding, or I can't hear what you're saying, your actions speak so loud that I can hear your words. Really speaks true here. You mentioned your trek, Phil. Philanthropy is a big part of the culture of your organization, and you've played a really a lead role in that also. I've noticed over the years. Tell us a bit about the Royal LePage Shelter Foundation, what it is, how much money you guys have over the years have been
Sure.
able to raise, and some of the activities that you take on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. It is the largest charity in the country focused on making our communities safer, eradicating violence from our communities, and supporting women and children who fall victim to it. So we will be this year. We will cross the $55 million raise mark.
Wow.
And when I say it's the largest such charity, I mean in Canadian industry, not in the real estate space. It is an important part of the fabric, the anti-violence fabric in our business. So yeah, we do different things to raise money for the foundation, but they're all ways to bring people together. So you asked about the trek. Every other year, we gather people. It turns out it's 120 people from right across the country, communities large and small, in 4 groups of 30, and we'll go somewhere hard on the planet and spend a week being uncomfortable. So we've climbed mountains in Iceland. We've walked along the border of Morocco and Algiers through the Sahara Desert. We've been most recently through the jungles of Cambodia. That was last fall. Sleeping in the 45-degree, 100% humidity jungles at night with all the noises and bugs and everything. People get very, very uncomfortable. And the idea is we go out and do these hard things to ignite passion behind our cause in the community, and thousands of Royal LePagers, clients, and families, neighbors support these trekkers across the country. We do that every other year, and in the in between years, the Royal LePage Riding Club, which I founded maybe 20 years ago, we do a ride for shelter. So this year, in about 2.5 weeks, we're off to Transylvania in the mountains of Romania, where we'll ride for a week and raise money for the foundation. We've been to the Arctic Ocean in Canada. We've been through the desert and jungles of Colombia. We've ridden the highest road in the world in the Himalayas in northern India. So, again, the idea is you get out, you do something hard, something very challenging personally. People are impressed that you'll do this to show your passion for the cause, and they support your ride through donations. So, yeah, it's a fascinating way to get together with colleagues that share a passion for both the charity and the activity we're using to drive the fundraising.
That's amazing, Phil. And I know you're always there leading the charge, which again is really amazing. I have to acknowledge your commitment and your consistency with that. For you, it's a hey, I'm always there kind of thing. So congratulations on that. I've got 4 questions I want to ask in our what I
Sure.
call our lightning round.
Okay.
The first thing is first couple are easy, then there's a tough one, and then there's an easy one.
Okay.
So, so how's that for the setup?
Okay. I'm
What's your
ready. Put
favorite
me in,
thing to
coach.
do? What's your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
Oh, gosh. You know, I do lots of different things. We talked about writing and music. I I've been a photographer since I was a kid. My mom bought my first Nikon, I think, when I was 13. I was shot for my university newspaper. So I definitely love that. And I want to thank you, Wayne. I've got 2 grandkids now. And when my first was born 4 years ago, you sent me the great Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places We'll Go. And he
Yeah.
loves Peter. Petey loves that book, and I did too. So I was very thoughtful. So when you have a big family like mine, four daughters, three out of four are married now, and the fourth is close, and a couple of grandkids, one on the way. Um, it's hard to not say that family's important, and it certainly is. And I got to give my wife Melanie a huge credit for being the project manager, the event director of our personal life, our family life, because it wouldn't get done otherwise. So, but I love to show up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me ask this, Phil. You have traveled to amazing places. You talked about it. You've been to the top of mountains, ridden the highest roads in the world, been to the Sahara Desert, all over the planet. If our listeners had one place to travel, we only have one opportunity to go somewhere on the planet, where would it be? Where would you recommend?
Well, I lived in India for a year and traveled through Europe. I took a year off as a kid and traveled through, North Africa and Europe. So Asia, Europe. I've been extensively through South America over the years, both through work and pleasure. So I've been around a lot of little nooks and crannies. I would
Mhm.
say the most jaw dropping trip I've done was a 9,000 kilometer journey through northern Alberta, northern BC, Yukon, and Northwest Territories to Tuktoyaktuk on
Mhm.
the Arctic Ocean. I literally rolled my bike to a stop beside a mama grizzly bear munching on grass. They're omnivores. If people didn't know that, they don't eat just people. And a couple of clubs playing in the meadow. I've had a timber wolf um, loping along beside me, muskox, caribou, and people. Fascinating people, but mostly just stunning, stunning natural beauty and thousands of, it was 9,000 kilometer trip. I'd say 7,000 of it we didn't see very, it was 11 of us that did this trip, the Royal LePage Riding Club. So I would say our own backyard in the north, particularly in the north, in the west, along the mountainous spine that Rockies and the other mountains that run up the west side of the continent, right in our backyard would be without doubt the most special, beautiful place on earth.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Oftentimes, Phil, we talk about successes, and I have never met any human being who has not failed their way to success. I remember one time, when you go speaking and they got the bio, and the fellow introducing me, I didn't know who it was, and they'd given him this written bio, and he said, "Well, thank you so much for getting it down to 3 paragraphs." He said, "Some of these speakers have pages," and I said, "Well, actually, it was 11 pages long, but we took all the failures out. There was only 3 paragraphs left." So that's how we got there.
What a
But
line.
let
I
me
love
ask,
it.
but let me ask this: what's the biggest failure that taught you a lesson in your business career?
Oh boy. Back when I was a young manager, it was probably my second or my first medium or middle management job. So my first management job was, again, it was in the IT industry, but I was managing, call it high potential, aggressive young people who were corporate climbing. My second management role, which was a middle management role, was running a group of engineers. And they were smart. They were older than me mostly, and I was full of piss and vinegar. We were going to do things, and it was a great time to be in IT. I will say so. There was lots to do, and I was all about incentives, and so I had a contest in play, and my chief architect, the guy who engineers these big IT products, a geek, right? He was had what you might call stilted EQ, but brilliant guy. I gave him this award, and did it in front of a bunch of people. He got lots of recognition, and it involved a monetary payment. I don't think it was very much, but it was, a monetary payment. And I didn't do the paperwork right away. Um, might have been, and we're off and running, might have been 3 or 4 weeks later. I'm having a meeting with him, and he quietly says, Phil, I have not received the monetary award that you promised me. And I go, oh, God, thanks, Tony. I will get right on that. And I didn't, because something else got in the way. Given another 3 weeks, he came in with his letter of resignation. And he said, I can't work for a person in the organization that doesn't meet its commitments. And I was aghast that I had done this. It was completely 100% my fault, because everything else was working for his career. And I didn't know what to do. And I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a checkbook back when we wrote checks for things. And I scribbled him the amount of the award out of my personal bank account. And I shoved it in. I go, Tony, I am so, so sorry. You own this whether you're leaving or not, and it's completely my fault. He looked at it and he said, please process the paperwork. And I did, of course, immediately. But it taught me a lesson
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it. To me, it was a minor thing. And the big thing was getting them up on stage and laying praise on them. And, don't tell my board of directors, but money's never been the big motivator for me. It's always other things. And I
yeah,
assumed that was, the same for everybody as a young manager. And I found, when you make a commitment, particularly call it financial or career related commitments, you need to deliver, and without delay. You can't
yeah.
be late on processing people's expenses. You can't, delay bonuses. You can't do things that impact people's lives directly. So yeah, that's a big failure. There's been many ways, but that one stands out,
You know
in
what?
my.
Thanks for being so candid with that, and it's a great learning a lesson for all of us, Phil. But because we get busy, right? And like you say, we kind of in our head think, well, this isn't a big deal. What's the big deal, right? And yeah, what a great lesson. Last question is this: you are, I said at the outset of our meeting today, you are one of the most respected voices in real estate. We're into Q3 now. Q4 is around the corner. In Q4 is when we start looking at 2027 from a planning
Sure.
perspective. What are you most excited about for 2027 for the real estate brokerage, for the real estate industry, and for real estate brokers specifically?
Our plan for 2026, when we built our plan back in the fall of 25, was that this was going to be a recovery year. We weren't projecting that the industry would be blowing through, sales volumes records or whatever, but clearly the transition to a solid growth year was what we expected. And we ran into the challenge that the world is dealing with, and many Americans are dealing with. A uh, a president, an American president, who is unpredictable, childish often, and is offer throws threats at the Canadian economy, the Canadian sovereignty, which completely hammered people's confidence, particularly first time homebuyers. And despite an amazingly resilient economy, and I could get into all the ways there is much more strength than the typical Canadian thinks in this economy,
Mhm.
but it is on solid foundation, despite what Donald Trump says about how much we need America. We are one of the strongest nations in the world. Our balance sheet is strong. Our growth trajectory is strong. We have what the world needs, and we have what we need. And so it's not the fundamentals that are the challenge. It is consumer confidence. And I believe there will be a shift come the November elections, which are coming up very quickly now in the United States. There'll be a shift in attitude. Most presidents in the final couple of years of their second term become what they call lame duck presidents. And people start looking over the horizon at what's happening. And I truly believe that most American leaders want a functioning relationship with their closest ally and neighbor. It's in their own best interest. And I believe that'll translate into a recovery of consumer confidence, particularly around first-time homebuyers. And I would expect that even, we've seen positive indications in the GTA market, which is one of two markets which has not recovered, or which until recently has not shown the recovery trajectory that we expected for the country in 26. I would expect that even Vancouver will join the club of growing versus treading water or atrophying, and that we will see a gradual thaw of this long post-pandemic correction. So I'm quite optimistic. I'm optimistic about increases of productivity through the leveraging of human-focused AI technology. I think that our frontline agents are just beginning to see how much time it will free up for them to spend belly to belly time with their clients versus in administrative tasks. So I'm very hopeful for the industry from a structural standpoint and from a market standpoint.
That's exciting. Well, I appreciate your sharing that, Phil. And what I love, one of the things I love about you when you were talking about this is it's so well thought out. I mean, you've got this nailed. This is obviously a passion of yours to be informed around what's going on. So I really appreciate your sharing that with everybody, particularly given that it's a bit of good news. Phil, I want to thank you for being such a great guest on The Profitable Broker today. Let me ask this question. If people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Phil Soper at royallepage.ca, good old email.
Yep.
I'm on all the major social platforms and try to keep on top of DMs. For example, I tend to get flooded on LinkedIn, so it's probably not the best way to reach out to me. But email or an Instagram DM or a Facebook direct message tend to be a little bit easier. I don't know what it is about LinkedIn, our most business focused social channel, but also the one that I see the most spammy sort of content, and it becomes a little bit of a challenge for a senior leader to sort through it, despite the efforts of my amazing EA, Shauna, who does keep my life in order. So, and I know she helped get us together. So a little
She
shout out.
did, and many thanks to Shauna. Phil, I want to thank you again for being a great guest. You're listening to The Profitable Broker, where we interview people who are really moving the needle in the real estate industry. Today, we talked to Phil Soper, the CEO of Royal LePage. Phil, thank you for sharing such great wisdom with us today. And until next time, we'll see everyone later.
You take care, Wayne. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. If today's episode resonated with you, hit subscribe or follow so you don't miss what's coming next. More stories, more lessons, and the unfiltered side of what it really takes to succeed in the market. I'm Wayne Einhorn, and this is The Profitable Broker. Real conversations about what it takes to run a successful brokerage. And we're just getting started. Let's go.
This is The Profitable Broker.